dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of Africa Today. In today's edition, we are going to talk about Egypt demanding permanent seats for Africa, Arab states at the UN Security Council. But first, we'll take this report where nearly Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration and Egyptian Expatriate Affairs, Badr Abdelati, stressed that the Horn of Africa region has always been a priority file for the Egyptian foreign policy, given its direct connection to Egypt's national security.
Badr Abdelati stressed that the Horn of Africa region has always been a priority file for the foreign policy, given its direct connection to Egypt's national security. His remarks came during a meeting he convened with U.S. Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa. The top Egyptian diplomat stressed Egypt's keenness to support efforts to achieve stability and restore security in the countries of the Horn of Africa, as well as the combat terrorism, extremism and organized crime in this area, which is vital for regional and international security and for safeguarding global shipping movement in the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The minister affirmed Egypt's keenness to work for strengthening peace, security and sustainable development efforts in the African continent, highlighting the Egyptian leadership's leading role in the post-conflict reconstruction and development file of the African Union, in addition to Egypt's hosting of the African Union Center for Post-Conflict Reconstruction and Development and the establishment of Cairo International Center on Conflict Resolution, Preservation and Peace Building. He also confirmed Egypt's keenness to achieve stability in Somalia by supporting its state institutions. According to the spokesperson, the meeting saw the exchange of views between both sides on a number of regional issues of mutual concern.
And moving on to our main topic, which is the Egyptian demand for permanent seats for Africa and the Arab states at the UN Security Council. To shed more light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Ambassador Bayoumi, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. How are you?
How are you, sir? Sir, Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati demanded permanent seats for Africa and the Arab nation at the UN Security Council. He addressed the UN General Assembly. Can you shed more light on that demand by Badr Abdelati?
It is a fair demand because the Security Council, at this moment, we don't have a permanent representative either for Arab world or for Africa. And it's a fair demand. But we need much more than that. We want to qualify when a country can use the veto right, because really in the Security Council, we are always stuck whenever you have a majority behind any decision, then one country of the 5 permanent members can stop it. We suffered from this very severely in the 60s because of the Soviet Union. Now we are suffering it very severely because of the United States. And the last vote, it was 14 countries with a decision to stop the war, while one country, the United States, vetoed it. So the decision did not take place. This is an unfair situation that one country between 196 countries can stop any decision we are trying to take.
Of course.
So the whole process needs to be have a look at and to arrange it. But we have a problem that the permanent members do not want to do that because they are enjoying this position, especially the United States nowadays. So
yes,
the whole UN system needs a visit after more than 70 years now of the establishment of the United Nations system, and it deserves all our efforts in order to make the United Nations a place where we can ask for a fair treatment to any problem we are discussing there.
Mr. Ambassador Abdulati said that it's not actually acceptable that Africa and the Arab states to date have no permanent seat at the UN Security Council. How the Arab and African states could benefit from that seat, and what are the efforts that should be done, and what are the cooperation agreement that should be reached by the African and Arab states in order to try to reach that permanent seat?
I must say I am satisfied with the coordination among the Arab states on one side and the coordination among the African states. And the role of Egypt, the role which Egypt is playing, is very positive. We are the highest representative country in Africa. We are hosting in Cairo. All the African countries are represented in embassies in Cairo. So Egypt is well and a very good representative of the African name. And if we have the opportunity and the decision to have one permanent seat in the United Nations for the African countries and another for the Arab countries, then we shall benefit from this, of course, to be able to present our cases and our problems, and to be a strong voice in order to participate for any decision to be taken.
Yes. Actually, since the founding of the United Nations in 1945, Africa has arguably undergone the most dramatic transformations of the region in the world. How do you read that, and what more do we expect from Africa in the coming phase, Mr. Ambassador?
We need to help Africa, because Africa is not in a good position.
Yes, unfortunately.
Generally, we talked about the political and security matter. Now, in the economic and trade matter, Africa is not in a good condition. The flow of money, I always say that, the flow of money going out of Africa is much more than the flow of money coming to Africa. Because Africa is paying its debts, it's paying the invoice of its imports, much more than it receives as investment, or much more than Africa is exporting to the whole world. That's why we made the Egyptian initiative during the summit of Sharm el-Sheikh in 2019, where we asked the donor countries and the rich countries in order to come to invest in Africa, on the African soil, with the Egyptian experience. And we got a positive reaction from China, from Japan, Tokyo, yes, and some European countries. But still on the ground, I don't see big change there. So we are for it until Africa gets its fair share in the international trade and the international economy.
Sir, how do you view Egypt's political role in Africa, especially in the past 2 years?
I am proud of our presence in Africa. And by the way, one Russian ambassador told me that the Europeans are jealous from you. Why? Because if you ask for a meeting for any ministers in an African country, you get it immediately. And I meet him immediately. Some European ambassadors were claiming that whenever they go to meet a minister, they have to wait for some time until they got the meeting. This will never happen. It has never happened to an Egyptian ambassador. Why? Because we are African. Why? Because it is the Africa of Muhammad Ali Pasha. But even before, it is the Africa of the Pharaonic period, when we send our boats around the African coast, whether on the east or to the south of Africa, to the west of Africa. And I traveled a lot in Africa, and I have seen many people who are proud that they are coming from Egyptian origin, pharaonic origin, because during the pharaonic time they were moving around the continent, and even in Cameroon, where I was representing Egypt as ambassador, there are many tribes in the west of Africa, in the west of Cameroon also. They would tell you that we are coming from Egypt, and they still building their houses on the shape of pyramids. What do you want more than that? So I think that we are very well located there, but we have to act much more, and we have a very good project, which is the Egyptian Agency for Development in Africa, but it needs more and more capital in order to be invested in the continent.
Yes. Sir, how do you see the role of the UN peacekeeping forces in Africa?
Pardon?
The role of the UN peacekeeping forces in Africa and Egypt as a participant of these forces.
We were there in every time Africa needs our forces. Since the Congo problem, since Gamal Abdel Nasser, and I am proud that we have the son of a very eminent African president, Nkrumah. We have Gamal Nkrumah, who became Egyptian citizen here. We have also many Africans who studied in Egypt. Mind you also that Al-Azhar Al-Sharif is hosting tens of thousands of African people here. And I tell you that Islam is a very heavy religion in Africa also. And I give you one example, which is the nice one. In Cameroon, where I was ambassador, they are 12 million. 4 of them are Christian, 4 of them are Muslims, and 4 are laik. Here we have our presence as Al-Azhar, and the Coptic Church has a good representative there. So they look to Egypt as a good symbol, whether for Islam or for Christianity, especially the Orthodox Church. So we are there, we are supporting all of these people, and we are, as I said, thousands of Africans studying in our country.
Indeed. Sir, to what extent here we should unify the African efforts in order to create more cooperation on the different levels, as you have kindly mentioned that, yet we need to cooperate on different fronts in order to achieve our targets as a continent, because we have many resources but yet not properly used.
Yes, you are absolutely right here, but I must say that relatively we have a sort of coordination among the African countries, and it's not difficult at all to have a coordinated opinion. We are much more in coordination, much more than any other groups, like the European Union, for instance. They are highly divided. The 27 talks 21 languages, they different. They were traditionally in a war among themselves in Europe for 300 years. Now they found that the European Union is much better choice. In Africa, we never commit a war against each other, and the problem is within any country, between the tribes and the parties and the families.
Yes, indeed. Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, always a pleasure, sir, to listen to your very precious input. Our dear guests, now the Egyptian state achievements over the past decade were showcased during a meeting of the African journalists and chief editors at the North African Regional Office of the Organization of the African Cities and the Local Governments in Cairo.
The Egyptian state's achievements over the past decade were showcased during a meeting of African journalists and chief editors at the North African Regional Office (NARO) of the Organization of African Cities and Local Governments in Cairo. The meeting, held earlier this week in the Egyptian capital, came within the framework of NARO's cooperation with the Union for African Journalists, bringing together African journalists from various countries. And during the meeting, a documentary featuring the Egyptian government's successful transformative development projects in various sectors, including infrastructure and urban development, was screened. Director of NARO, Mohammed Higazi, discussed NARO's history and achievements, noting that the role of local authorities and governments has become important to African sustainable development. He discussed various initiatives aimed at creating job opportunities for youth and women, including the Hands of Africa project, an electronic platform designed to promote African culture through marketing of artisanal products. NARO, based in Cairo, played a crucial role in fostering dialogue among media professionals, highlighting regional issues and cultural connections, and contributing significantly to the broader development of media in Africa.
And nearly 30,000 suspected mpox cases have been reported in Africa so far this year, most of them in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where tests have run out.
In recent reports, the WHO has stated that there have been almost 30,000 suspected cases of monkeypox in Africa since the start of this year. According to the United Nations Health Body, a majority were in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has been grappling with an uptick in cases along with its neighbor Burundi. In its report, the WHO also said that there have been more than 800 deaths in the same time period as a result of suspected monkeypox. It comes after the WHO's Director General declared the outbreak of the disease in parts of Africa a public health emergency, the organization's highest level of alert. Beyond the African continent, a handful of cases have also been confirmed in countries including Sweden and Pakistan. The virus that causes the disease was first discovered decades ago, but it has changed over the past several years, resulting in the disease spreading more easily between humans. Vaccines against the virus are expected to be carried out in the Democratic Republic of Congo from October the 2nd.
Our dear viewers, that would bring us to the end of this edition of Africa Today. Till tomorrow with another cruise. Goodbye.